Hello, this is Damir for the Droid Effect, and this is my review of the Sony Xperia Z1. The Z1 is supposed to be the best of all what Sony has to offer, so let's find out if that's really the case and what exactly Sony is able to deliver with the Xperia Z1. If you hold the phone in your hands for the first time, you will immediately notice how sturdy and premium it feels, despite the glass at the front and the back, what usually can seem like something rather fragile. But after all, glass is still glass, so it's more likely to break when it hits the ground, like a phone built out of aluminum or plastic. The design itself is pretty boxy due to the square case. The edges are all rounded and the frame is out of metal, which makes it feel very solid, but it's still squeaking when you bend it nonetheless. The front and the back are both made out of glass, protected by a screen protector, which I will talk about more later in the display part of this review. If we take a look at the left, we will see a port for a dock connector, the micro USB and the micro SD card slot, both covered by a flap, keeping it safe from water. On the right side we see a SIM tray, also covered by a flap, the power button in the middle, the volume rocker right below and the dedicated camera shutter button at the bottom. My initial impressions of the power button and volume rocker placement were proven right after using it for a bit. I still think the volume rocker should be put above the power button, that is placed nicely, because you really have to inconveniently bend your thumb to reach it. I'm not really a big fan of flaps, and especially the one for the micro USB port is annoying since you need it at least once a day. The others aren't an issue since those won't be used that frequently, I guess. I know the flaps are there due to the water protection, but still not a big fan of it. On the top there is the headphone jack, nothing else is there otherwise. At the bottom there is a hole for the lanyard cord and the down-facing speaker. The edges of the speaker cutout are rather sharp and can be really annoying when supporting the grip of your phone with your pinky, because it's always scrubbing against the sharp edge. Holding the device like this for a longer period of time really isn't comfortable at all. But on the other hand, you most probably won't be able to hold it like this for too long anyways, due to the huge size of the device. And this is already my big issue I'm having with the Z1. It's just way too big and bulky for a 5-inch device. The LG G2 is smaller despite having a 5.2-inch screen. And compared to my HTC One X with 4.7-inch that is about as big as the Samsung S4 that sports a 5-inch display as well, it just looks humongous. Sony should have tried harder to trim down the bezels, especially the width. That makes one-handed use with fairly small hands practically impossible. And here we are already at the second weak point of this phone, the display. Sony can claim as much as they want to having the best display enhancing tricks in the business, but after all the display isn't even close to being as good as they want you to believe. The display is pretty sharp, what is to be expected on a 1080p screen, and the colors are nicely saturated and fairly accurate. The blacks are not the best but also not the worst in the industry. Whites are pretty white, though what is a nice thing, no unnecessary tendency towards yellow or blue. The brightness is okay, but I've definitely seen brighter ones out there. The visibility in bright sunlight should be okay though in most cases. So after these last couple of sentences, the display sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Yes and no. No, because all those good attributes are only accurate as long as you look straight on towards the screen, but the moment you just slightly tilt the device you can forget about all what I just said. The colors get completely washed out, whites and the colors shift towards the grey and yellow part of the color spectrum. Blacks are able to keep up a bit better here, but it doesn't change the fact the whole display quality gets diminished. And some of you are maybe thinking right now you don't usually look at the screen at weird angles. But believe me, you do it more often than you think you are doing it, but usually just don't notice it if the current device has stable viewing angles. Especially when I'm at home, I often don't pick up the device but rather use it where it lies right now, and then you will instantly notice how annoying bad viewing angles in daily life can be, since you can't use and enjoy the device at the same time. So overall, I'd even dare to say the Z1's display is the worst 1080p screen on the market, right after the even worse Xperia Z1. There's one more thing I wanted to take the time to mention, and I briefly teased it before. It's the screen protector covering the glass on the front and the back of the device, where it's absolutely okay with me on the back. I absolutely can't stand it on the front for several reasons. For once, the front just doesn't feel the same as glass anymore. The feeling when swiping over the screen is less smooth and also more sticky. Again, that's really good on the back, because the glass isn't slippery at all when picking up the device or holding it, but it's a total no-go on the front. The next, even more annoying thing for me is the fact you can feel the protector at the edges extremely well, and since a lot of apps these days require you to swipe inward from the bezel, you will feel the super annoying edge that is quite rough and extremely uncomfortable. I also use a lot of bezel swipe gestures, so the annoyance is even bigger for me. It may sound trivial to you, but just check it for yourself in the store. Try to swipe from the edge on the device towards the middle of the screen and you will immediately see what I mean. One more thing I want to mention is the fact the screen gets smudged and dirty faster than usual, and it's also harder just to swipe it clean on your shirt or something like this. So be sure to have a cloth right by your side if you want it to stay clean. Let's move away from the screen and check the sound of the device. In terms of loudness it's pretty okay, but also nothing special anymore. Definitely not with something called boom sound being out there. But it should be more than okay in most of the cases after all. In terms of actual sound quality, things are slightly worse though. The treble on the high volumes can get quite harsh and flamboyant, forcing you to take it down a step or two. There's also a lack of bass noticeable, so the sound mostly consists out of moderate mids and quite harsh high tones. Not really suiting for music, it's quite okay for YouTube videos and games where volume is more important than the actual quality, especially in noisy surroundings. Another quite bad thing is the speaker at the bottom getting blocked too easily, so the sound gets muffled or can't be heard at all anymore. Enough with the weaker points of this device, let's check the camera. First of all, I'm no camera expert, so my experience is more one of a casual user who occasionally likes to snap a picture here and there. And for someone like me, the camera does hold up quite well, I'd say. Pictures in good lighting conditions turn out quite sharp with a lot of details, and the color reproduction looks great to me. The autofocus works fast and very precise most of the time, even if I wasn't able to get the grapes focused properly. Pictures in low light didn't turn out as impressive, showing a lot of noise and losing a lot of detail and colors. Videos in good lighting turn out impressive as well. Recording at 1080p, the video is smooth at constant 30 frames per second, even if it looks very choppy while recording though, like it would be skipping a lot of frames, which can be quite irritating while recording. Good thing though, the actual video itself isn't showing anything of that choppiness. The video is very sharp and the focus works very fast outdoors, but indoors it gets sort of distracted pretty easily, not knowing what exactly to focus sometimes, and when it does, it has a hard time keeping focus on the target as well. So it's not really made for recording smaller objects indoors, because the focus is jumping around all the time, trying to desperately figure out what's going on. But then again, you will most probably record videos outdoor anyways. I also recommend you to watch my camera issue video I made earlier, so be sure to watch that for more information. So overall, the camera does a very nice job for casual use and should definitely satisfy most people. Sorry I can't really compare it to any other smartphone cameras, since I just don't have any others. Comparing it to my old 1X would be nothing more than a bad joke, so I'll just leave it like that. Now we are finally at the point of this review that I was most excited about when I got the device, the performance. Powered by a Qualcomm Snapdragon 800, this device really manages to fly through everything you throw at it. If you want more detailed information about benchmark performance in daily use and throttling that caused due to heating up, I recommend you to watch my other video specifically taking a look at that. One thing I forgot to show off in that video that's quite amazing but also important is the ability of the phone to switch between running apps with an insane and almost unbelievable speed. I mostly launch my apps with swipes, and the Z1 seems to make them appear even before I finish my swipe gestures. This makes multitasking so much faster and also convenient. But it's not just the task switching, but also the actual app launch that is noticeably faster than on other devices like my also pretty snappy Nexus 7 2014. In overall, I'm more than just satisfied by the performance. I'm really impressed. It's almost exactly what I expected the Snapdragon 800 turn out to be. I still won't say it's 100% lag free. If you know me, you will also know how I think about lag on Android, so don't take it too seriously. I only got pretty bad optimized apps to occasionally stutter. Apps that usually run fine on other devices run even better on the Z1. Browsing, scrolling through apps, multitasking and everything else gets handled with such an ease, it's a real pleasure to use such a device. Right now there isn't really anything to compete against the Snapdragon 800 besides maybe the also very powerful Nvidia Tegra 4 I also already reviewed in my Toshiba Excite Pro review. But that one won't be broadly available on phones anytime soon, and also has an even bigger heat issue than the Snapdragon 800 could ever have. So if you want one of the fastest available phones on the market, this is definitely one to go for. I will only briefly mention gaming in this review, since this is also part of my performance video. But let me tell you this, no matter what game you are throwing at the Z1, the phone will be able to handle it with easy, delivering you smooth and more than playable frame rates at any time, as long as the device manages to stay cool enough not to throttle too hard. I am not 100% sure I have a faulty unit or not, so I don't want to go into detail too much about it here. Reading forums and such, I couldn't really find any other people mentioning any severe amount of throttling, so maybe there's nothing to worry about after all. I'm just mentioning so my review will give you a complete picture of my experience during my time of reviewing it. I just don't feel comfortable to leave out such important things out of the review. Let's head over to the next nice thing about the Z1, the software. It is very close to stock Android and feels way more like a themed stock Android with a few little enhancements than anything else. No heavy UI layer on top like Samsung, HTC or LG like to put them on. Also not any real bloat after all. Yes, there are a few pre-installed apps like the Walkman audio player and the Sony Gallery that is quite nice. The other few apps are far from being intrusive in any kind of way, so don't worry about that at all. The whole look is pretty sleek, elegant and almost minimalistic. There are a few nice additions like the customizable quick toggles I personally prefer to the stack Android tiles because they are always accessible and don't take up too much space. The launcher is fast and smooth but also gives you most of what you could wish for. Nothing fancy but very convenient to use, even though I would still go for something like Nova Launcher in the end. There is also a light way of theming the system UI, using 8 different color and style themes. Nothing as deep as the custom ROM theme chooser, but quite a nice thing for sure. This way at least you get some light method to personalize your phone to your liking. Another different thing compared to stock is the rather limited and useless lock screen. It works fast, reliable and offers you to use lock screen widgets, but sadly that's about it. No lock screen shortcuts to quickly get access to your most frequent apps out of the box. If you want to use those or more, you will have to rely on third-party solutions, which never worked as reliable than the stock lock screen for me. Overall, I'd say this is by far my most favorite third-party UI of all, and I would even dare to say it's slightly superior to stock vanilla due to the small enhancements like the nicer quick toggles and the available themes, but of course this comes with the price of delayed updates of the Android version it's running itself. It's time to check the battery life now. After all, the fastest performance using the best software isn't worth much if it's running out of juice, but I can give you the all clear here for the most part. I managed to get through a fairly heavy day of use with about 4 hours of on-screen time with a total of 20 to 24 hours in total. I think this should be enough for most people to get through the day. Brightness was fixed at about 40 to 50% most of the time, but if you are a heavy gamer you can forget these results. Playing games really diminishes the battery life, especially the screen on time a lot. Then screen on time can quickly drop to 2 hours or less depending on the amount of time and games you are playing. If you are no gamer at all, I think you should be totally fine if the results above sort of match your usage. I also have to mention it seems like I'm having a habit of draining my device faster than most other people do, so your mileage could get maybe even longer, keep that in mind. The standby drain on the Z1 seems fantastic, so I think you could even get through 2 full days of usage on a single charge with moderate use. But of course the mileage always varies from user to user, so take mine just as an example. If you read my Snapdragon 800 piece, you know how excited I was about the Quick Charge 2.0, so here's how it looks on the Z1. A full charge from about 4% up to 100% takes up to slightly more than 3 hours. If you consider my One X with only 1800 mAh needs at least 3.5 hours for the same task, it isn't that bad, but also not quite as good as I expected. I hoped for something like under 2 hours, sadly this didn't come true. The Z1 packs a 3000 mAh battery, so it charges about 40% faster. Those aren't 75% like stated, but my quick calculation doesn't really work this way because they compare it to a Qualcomm SoC without quick charge and not the Tegra 4 I'm using on my One X. But all in all it's not that bad since the battery usually holds long enough and most people charge their phones overnight anyways. So, all tests have been done and here is my conclusion, but I will also give you my personal thoughts on this device after the summary. You get about the fastest available phone out there on the market right now, both in terms of daily use but also gaming. You get a pretty well polished UI without any intrusive kind of bloat with some nice and useful enhancements. The battery isn't the best out there, but it should hold up pretty good and get most people through the day. The sound is about average I'd say, but should mostly get a job done, but don't expect any wonders here. The camera is pretty great in sunlight, slightly above average at best in low light situations, but overall definitely well enough overall for most people. The build quality is very premium, the device is really put nicely together all along, with the nice metal frame that can't prevent the device from squeaking while bending though. But in normal use this should be of no concern. Nice and pretty as the phone may look, same thing can't be said for the size. Compared with most other 5-inch devices it's just too big, boxy and bulky. Especially the huge side bezels keep you from having a nice and comfortable grip for a longer period of time. Also, one-handed use gets way harder than it should be. Sharp edges around the speaker grill make the bad grip even more an issue than it already is. The button placement isn't quite perfect, but still way better than most others. Personally, only Nokia manages the perfect placement in my opinion. The display with its really more than just subpar viewing angles is definitely one of the bigger issues of this device. As long as you look straight onto the screen, things are fine. Things change quite fast and drastically though, even just slightly tilting the device, horizontally or vertically, doesn't matter, it's bad in both ways. I'm still having a hard time to decide if it's the bulky design or the bad display being the worst part of this device. But if you check the device in the store and you like the handling, size, design and are okay with the display, there's not much else to complain about the Z1 otherwise. Okay, my review is mostly done, now it's time for me to share my personal thoughts with you. Personally, I wouldn't buy this phone myself, mostly because of the bad display and the device's size compared to its screen size. The size would be acceptable for a 5.2 or 5.3 inch device, but definitely not for a 5-inch phone, not in late 2013. All the rest spec-wise would be more than just okay. The software as stated before is great out of the box, but no stock software would actually keep me away from using custom ROMs in the end. I think recent Sony devices get quite a fair amount of good custom ROM support, but it's no Nexus level after all. I know this doesn't sound very objective and also doesn't have much to do with the actual device's qualities, but that's exactly why I left it out of the more objective review and I'm only mentioning it here as my personal opinion. You don't really have to take this into the equation if you don't want to, but I still wanted to share my personal thoughts with you. And maybe this somehow helps you decide if you kind of think the same. So that's it for my Sony Xperia Z1 review. I really hope you liked it. Like always, please give me a thumbs up, reshare this video and subscribe my channel. Thanks. Over and out.